Which of the following best explains the difference between general advice and personal advice under the Corporations Act 2001? A. General advice includes tailored product recommendations, but without discussing affordability. B. General advice does not consider the client's personal circumstances, while personal advice does. C. Personal advice must avoid product recommendations. D. General advice must be provided only after written financial plan is prepared. The correct answer is B. General advice does not consider the client's personal circumstances, while personal advice does. Explanation. Under Section 766 of the Corporations Act 2001, general advice is defined as financial product advice that does not take into account person's objectives, financial situation, or needs, whereas personal advice does. Representatives must understand and communicate these distinct clearly to remain compliant and avoid giving personal advice unintentionally. Reference: Corporations Act 2001 SB ASIC Regulatory Guide 244. Giving information. General advice and scaled advice. Which of the following bodies is primarily responsible for enforcing compliance with the licensing and conduct obligations under the Corporations Act? A. APRA. B. ASIC. C. Act D. AFS Licensee. The correct answer is B. ASIC. Explanation. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission (ASIC) is the primary regulator responsible for licensing financial service providers, monitoring conduct, and enforcing breaches of the Corporations Act 2001. APRA focuses more on the financial soundness of institutions, and the ACT is primarily involved in competition and consumer protection. Reference: ASIC Act 2001. The Corporations Act 2001, Part 7.6. Is called a general insurance advisor tells a customer, based on your car type and age, this policy would suit you better than the basic plan, and she did not ask any specific questions about the customer's budget or coverage needs. What is the compliance risk in this situation? A. ISCOR is offering personal advice without full statement of advice. B. ISCOR is in breach for using jargon. C. ISCOR gave misleading factual information. D. ISCOR followed the general advice model correctly. The correct answer is A. ISCOR was offering personal advice without a full statement of advice explanation. Although ISCOR avoided an in-depth fact find, her comment referenced the customer's personal circumstances, car type and age, which risks classifying the interaction as personal advice. Under ARG 244, this constitutes compliance breach unless supported by appropriate disclosures and documentation. Reference: ASIC Regulatory Guide 244, Corporations at SAE. Which of the following best describes the purpose of public liability insurance? A. Covers injuries to employees at the workplace. B. Insures vehicles in public spaces. C. Protects a business from third-party injury or property damage claims. D. Provides coverage for stolen inventory. The correct answer is C. Protects a business from third-party injury or property damage claims. Explanation. Public liability insurance protects businesses against legal liability when third parties, e.g., customers or the public, are injured or suffer property damage due to the business's activities. It does not cover employees that would fall under workers' compensation. Reference: General insurance product definitions. Public and product liability insurance is to sing a customer wants to lodge a claim after his business equipment was stolen. He calls the advisor, who tells him to wait until renewal to avoid increasing his premiums. The advisor takes no steps to assist. What is the breach in this situation? A. The advisor offered unlicensed legal advice. B. The advisor failed to act on client's legitimate claim request. C. The advisor violated AMLF rules. D. The advisor gave an incorrect FAD. The correct answer is B. The advisor failed to act on a client's legitimate claim request. Explanation. Refusing to lodge or delay legitimate claim request is unethical and may breach GICAP 2020 and the Insurance Contracts Act. Clients have the right to timely and fair claims handling regardless of renewal timelines or premium concerns. Reference: GICAP 2020 Section 5. Insurance Contracts Act 1984 ISTA 10. A licensed general insurance representative discusses three-car insurance products with a walk-in customer. He explains the features of each but does not ask any questions or collect personal information. The customer later claims the policy was recommended What should Istatan have done differently to avoid confusion and comply with his general advice obligations? A. Provided the customer with financial needs analysis. B. Clarified that he was offering factual information and general advice only. C. Avoided mentioning any product features. D. Refused to speak to the customer unless file note was signed. The correct answer is B. Clarified that he was offering factual information and general advice only. Explanation. Istatan's conduct blurred the line between general and personal advice. He must clearly communicate the scope and limitations of his advice, especially by delivering the general advice warning. Not doing so may lead to misrepresentation and legal exposure. Reference AKG 244.33. Communicating the advice model. Which of the following is a requirement when providing general advice under the FSR regime? A. Advisors must include a general advice warning to inform the client the advice does not consider their personal circumstances. B. Advisors must assess the client's needs before suggesting any products. C. Advisors must prepare financial plan for the client's review. D. Advisors may not refer to product features in general advice. The correct answer is A. Advisors must include a general advice warning to inform the client the advice does not consider their personal circumstances. Explanation. The Financial Services Reform (FSR) Act requires that providers of general advice give a general advice warning to inform clients that the advice does not take into account their personal objectives or financial situation. This helps ensure clarity, transparency, and limits liability. Reference Corporations Act ASIC RG 168 and RG 244. Ista Patel, a customer service representative, is assisting a client seeking business interruption insurance. He explains the product using factual statements, avoids asking personal questions, and provides a general advice warning. However, he suggests that this cover might be good if your income relies heavily on foot traffic. What is the compliance risk in this scenario? A. He disclosed confidential client information. B. He breached the Privacy Act by storing data. C. He inferred the customer's financial reliance, risking personal advice classification. D. He violated the AMUP provisions. The correct answer is C. He inferred the customer's financial reliance, risking personal advice classification. Explanation. By referencing the customer's dependency on foot traffic, personal circumstance, Ista Patel risks giving personal advice even if unintentionally. Under ASIC G 244, this distinction is crucial, especially in Tier 2 where personal advice is not permitted. Reference Corporations Act SBE 244.61. Which statement best describes how anti-hawking provisions apply to general insurance advice? A. Advisors must only sell through social media platforms. B. Advisors cannot offer unsolicited financial products in real-time interactions. C. Advisors may call clients anytime with an opt-out clause. D. Anti-hawking does not apply to general insurance products. The correct answer is B. Advisors cannot offer unsolicited financial products in real-time interactions. Explanation. Under the Corporations Act 2001, anti-hawking provisions prohibit unsolicited offers of financial products, especially through real-time calls or face-to-face meetings. These rules apply to general insurance products and protect consumers from pressure-selling tactics. Reference Corporations Act ASIC Info 144. Is like a general insurance representative discusses 3 travel insurance options with the customer planning a trip to Europe. She clearly explains that none of the products cover pandemics, but also adds, this one's probably best for your needs based on your age and itinerary. Which rule has she likely breached? A. She failed to disclose policy limits. B. She has made personal recommendation without full fact finding. C. She misrepresented product features. D. She violated privacy regulations. The correct answer is B. She has made a personal recommendation without full fact-finding explanation. Although she explained the limitations clearly, is referred to the client's age and itinerary, which introduces personal circumstances, shifting the advice from general to personal. Unless authorized and qualified, such advice breaches Tier 2 limits. Reference ICAR G 244 Corporations SA. What is the primary role of an APS licensee when overseeing representatives who give general advice? A. Monitor compliance and ensure adequate training, supervision, and breach reporting. B. Set insurance premiums and underwrite policies. C. Provide customers with legal assistance. D. Approve financial plans before advice is given. The correct answer is A. Monitor compliance and ensure adequate training, supervision, and breach reporting explanation. AFS licensees are responsible for ensuring that representatives act within the scope of their authorization, are appropriately trained, and comply with ongoing regulatory obligations. Licensees must also have systems in place to detect and report breaches to a SIC reference. Corporations AXA. ASICAR G104. Licensing, meeting the general obligations. Is Jensen the general insurance representative is helping a walk-in client compare to standard landlord insurance products. She does not ask any questions about the client's rental income or financial needs, but provides the PDS and explains key differences between the products. What else must is Jensen do to remain compliant? A. Provide a statement of advice. B. Disclose personal financial tips. C. Deliver the general advice warning clearly. D. Skip record keeping since no personal advice was given. The correct answer is C. Deliver the general advice warning clearly explanation. When providing general advice, is Jensen must deliver a general advice warning that makes it clear the advice does not consider the client's personal objectives or financial circumstances. Failure to do so risks misleading the client and breaching RG 244 reference AICAR G 244.37 244.40 Corporations Act 2001 SAR. Is O'Reilly an advisor at retail insurance firm presents two landlord insurance products to customer? She says, most of my clients go for this one. It seems to give better protection. The customer has not shared any details about their rental property. Which of the following best describes the risk in this situation? A. She has provided general advice appropriately. B. She has made an implied personal recommendation without understanding the client's needs. C. She correctly used product comparison as sales strategy. D. She complied fully with disclosure requirements. The correct answer is B. She has made an implied personal recommendation without understanding the client's needs. Explanation. Using language like better protection or referring to what others choose may create the impression of personal recommendation, especially if individual circumstances haven't been considered. This puts the advisor at risk of unintentionally providing personal advice under ASICAR G244.45 44.48 reference Corporations Act SB ASICAR G244. Which of the following principles best explains an insurer's right to recover losses from third party after settling claim? A. Insurable interest. B. Indemnity. C. Subrogation. D. Utmost good faith. The correct answer is C. Subrogation explanation. Subrogation allows the insurer, after compensating the insured, to pursue recovery from any liable third party. This ensures the insured doesn't receive double compensation and the insurer can reduce claim costs. It is core principle of indemnity-based contracts. Reference: Insurance Contracts Act 1984, Section 67. Principles of insurance law. Mr. Lopez lodges a claim for storm damage to his home. Upon investigation, it's revealed that the roof was in poor condition before the policy was purchased and this wasn't disclosed. What is the likely consequence under the Insurance Contracts Act 1984? A. The insurer may reduce or deny the claim due to non-disclosure. B. The insurer must pay the full claim regardless. C. The advisor is liable for the non-disclosure. D. The policy automatically converts to accidental damage. The correct answer is A. The insurer may reduce or deny the claim due to non-disclosure. Explanation. Under Section 21 of the Insurance Contracts Act 1984, clients must comply with the duty of disclosure before entering a contract. Failure to do so entitles the insurer to deny or reduce a claim if the information would have affected the underwriting decision. Reference: Insurance Contracts Act 1984 ENZ. Which of the following is not a characteristic of general advice? A. It includes statements of opinion about products. B. It considers the customer's unique financial goals. C. It may be delivered without assessing client needs. D. It must be accompanied by general advice warning. The correct answer is B. It considers the customer's unique financial goals. Explanation. By definition, general advice does not consider the personal financial situation, objectives, or needs of the client. If it does, it becomes personal advice, which involves stricter compliance obligations. Reference: Corporations Act 2001 SB ASICAR G 244.21 244.25. What does the insurance principle of utmost good faith, ubi remi fide, require from both parties? A. Making a legal declaration at every renewal. B. Conducting a police report with every claim. C. Assessing the premium based solely on risk rating. D. Full and honest disclosure of all material facts. The correct answer is D. Full and honest disclosure of all material facts. Explanation. The principle of utmost good faith requires both the insurer and insured to act honestly and disclose all material facts. Breaching this duty can void the contract or deny claims. Its foundational principle under Section 13 of the Insurance Contracts Act 1984, reference, Insurance Contracts Act 1984. Which of the following is not a requirement of the general insurance advice process? A. Giving the general advice warning. B. Preparing a statement of advice. C. Providing the PDS and FAG. D. Avoiding discussion of client-specific financial goals. The correct answer is B. Preparing a statement of advice. Explanation. A statement of advice, is required only when personal advice is provided. For general advice, only the ADES and general advice warning are mandatory provided the advisor does not consider the client's personal financial circumstances. Reference, Corporations Act T2GI 175. Mr. Sullivan, a trainee advisor, tells a client during a product demonstration, "You probably want higher coverage since you're renting out your home." He does not have full understanding of the client's rental income, property size, or lease structure. Which part of the code or regulatory framework has he most likely breached? A. Failure to explain fees and charges. B. Failure to remain within the scope of general advice. C. Failure to quote multiple products. D. Failure to recommend life insurance. The correct answer is B. Failure to remain within the scope of general advice. Explanation. Mr. Sullivan has referenced the client's personal situation, renting home, without conducting full fact-find or giving statement of advice. This shifts the conversation into personal advice territory, which he is not authorized to provide under Tier 2 qualification. Reference, AICR 244 Corporations at SA. Is Roman, a Tier 2 advisor, collects a customer's basic contact and vehicle details before showing comparison between two motor vehicle insurance policies. She avoids asking about income or occupation and does not offer recommendations. What obligation does she still have regarding documentation? A. None, as she gave no advice. B. Only to print the PDSC, record all personal financial information. D. Maintain file notes that advice was general and compliant. The correct answer is D. Maintain file notes that advice was general and compliant. Explanation. Even when giving general advice, advisors must document the interaction, especially to demonstrate that they did not consider personal financial circumstances and that the general advice warning was given. This is critical for internal compliance reviews and audits. Reference, AICR 244.54, a Tier 2 compliance guide. Which of the following is an obligation under general advice compliance when providing insurance product information? A. Use technical language to meet legal disclosure requirements. B. Present information factually and avoid implying that one product is better for the individual customer. C. Highlight personal tax advantages of the product. D. Direct clients to an underwriter for product selection. The correct answer is B. Present information factually and avoid implying that one product is better for the individual customer. Explanation. When giving general advice, it is critical to avoid making subjective or comparative claims that could be seen as a personal recommendation. Advisors must stick to factual product features and present disclaimers and general advice warnings. Reference, AICR 244 Corporations Act 2001. General advice requirements. Which of the following correctly describes the concept of indemnity in general insurance? A. Providing a payout that exceeds the loss to reward the client. B. Paying the value of the asset when it was new. C. Covering both direct and consequential losses regardless of policy terms. D. Compensating the insured to restore them to their pre-loss position. The correct answer is D. Compensating the insured to restore them to their pre-loss position. Explanation. The principle of indemnity ensures the insured is placed in the same financial position they were in before the loss, no more and no less. This prevents profit from insurance and maintains fairness. Reference, Insurance Principles. Indemnity Doctrine. Which of the following practices best aligns with the ethical principles expected under the General Insurance Code of Practice when interacting with a vulnerable customer? A. Refusing to process a claim unless all documentation is immediately submitted. B. Providing access to a language interpreter at no additional cost. C. Advising the customer to seek external help before contacting the insurer again. D. Recommending they lodge their complaint through a legal advisor. The correct answer is B. Providing access to a language interpreter at no additional cost. Explanation. The General Insurance Code of Practice 2020 requires that insurers identify and support vulnerable customers, including those facing language barriers. Offering an interpreter helps meet obligations of accessibility, fairness, and clear communication. Reference: GICAP 2020, Section 14. Customers experiencing vulnerability. Which of the following would most likely breach the Privacy Act 1988? A. Recording a phone call with customer consent. B. Storing client information in a secure encrypted database. C. Sending customer policy details to a third party without explicit authorization. D. Providing the client a copy of their data upon request. The correct answer is C. Sending customer policy details to a third party without explicit authorization. Explanation. Under the Privacy Act 1988 and the Australian Privacy Principles Apps, insurers must obtain explicit consent before disclosing any personal information to third parties unless required by law. Unauthorized disclosure is a serious breach. Reference: Privacy Act 1988 App 6. Use or disclose personal information. Mr. Davidson, a Tier 2 general insurance advisor, receives a call from a distressed client after a house fire. The client is overwhelmed and confused. Mr. Davidson continues discussing product exclusions without offering any support. Which ethical standard has most likely been breached? A. Advising the client without full disclosure. B. Failing to consider the customer's vulnerability during crisis. C. Making recommendations based on insufficient knowledge. D. Promoting competing product over the phone. The correct answer is B. Failing to consider the customer's vulnerability during crisis. Explanation. The GICAP requires staff to be trained in recognizing and responding to vulnerability, especially during crises like fires or trauma. Mr. Davidson's lack of empathy and failure to pause or offer appropriate support could constitute breach of ethical conduct. Reference: GICAP 2020, Section 14.9. Trauma and hardship. Which of the following is a compliant practice when providing general insurance advice? A. Explaining product features using clear, simple, and culturally inclusive language. B. Making assumptions about client needs based on appearance. C. Advising the client to purchase add-ons without product disclosure. D. Suggesting coverage limits based on a personal opinion. The correct answer is A. Explaining product features using clear, simple, and culturally inclusive language. Explanation. Communication must be tailored to the client's understanding, including avoiding jargon, using inclusive communication, and checking for language barriers or vulnerability. This is aligned with the General Insurance Code of Practice and ASIC's fairness expectations in RG 168. Ref. GICAP 2020 168.19 168.24. Is not a Tier 2 advisor, is assisting a client with limited English. The client nods during the conversation but doesn't ask questions or seem fully engaged. Is nor proceeds with giving general advice and documents the file. Which of the following would be most appropriate for is nor to have done? A. Proceeded as general advice does not require full understanding. B. Asked if the client wanted the PDS emailed and moved on. C. Offered interpreter services or asked if the client would prefer translated materials. D. Referred the client to ASIC for help. The correct answer is C. Offered interpreter services or asked if the client would prefer translated materials. Explanation. ASIC and the General Insurance Code of Practice require insurers and representatives to take reasonable steps to support vulnerable clients, including providing interpreter access using translated materials and confirming understanding. Ref. GICAP 2020, Part 9. Customers experiencing vulnerability. ASIC RG 265. Always the most appropriate first step when a client lodges a complaint about poor general advice. A. Escalate immediately to AFCAT. B. Acknowledge the complaint within required IDA timeframes and begin internal resolution. C. Cancel the policy to avoid dispute. D. Send the client back to the advisor without action. The correct answer is B. Acknowledge the complaint within required IDA timeframes and begin internal resolution. Explanation. Under a SIC regulatory guide RG 271 internal dispute resolution, licensees must acknowledge complaints within 24 hours or 1 business day and attempt to resolve them internally before escalating externally. Failure to do so can result in a SIC action or breaches under the licensee's obligations. Ref. RG 271.50 SIC RG 271.59 The Corporations Act Sub 1G. Which of the following is an example of unethical and non-compliant conduct when selling general insurance? A. Refusing to speculate on product suitability. B. Referring a vulnerable client to a more experienced advisor. C. Recommending cover without disclosure documents to close the sale quickly. D. Providing the PDS and SG before general advice is given. The correct answer is C. Recommending cover without disclosure documents to close the sale quickly. Explanation. General insurance advisors must provide the FHR and EDS prior to giving general advice. Skipping this step is a breach of disclosure obligations under SB and SALV the Corporations Act and could also constitute misleading conduct. Ref. Corporations Act 2001 SB. ASIC G 168. Mr. Taylor, a newly certified Tier 2 representative, is unsure about recent legislative changes to insurance distribution. He continues advising clients using outdated materials from last year's training. What key CPD obligation has Mr. Taylor failed to meet? A. Failing to comply with ML rules. B. Failing to provide SOA. C. Failing to offer product recommendations. D. Failing to undertake sufficient ongoing training to maintain competency. The correct answer is D. Failing to undertake sufficient ongoing training to maintain competency. Explanation. Tier 2 representatives are required to maintain up-to-date knowledge, including any changes to products, disclosure laws, and regulatory expectations. Neglecting CPD undermines compliance with RG 104 licensing general obligations and could result in a breach of licensee supervision obligations. Ref. RG 100 4.75 104.88 ASIC training standards.